This story is based on accounts shared by wedding guests and eyewitnesses. The sound of ambulance sirens cut through the wedding music, the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the crystal chandeliers of the luxury ballroom. Guests were standing, some with phones out recording, others trying to see what had happened, all of them talking at once about the unconscious man being loaded onto a stretcher. 15 minutes earlier, a drunk guest had said something unforgivable to Mike Tyson's daughter on her wedding day. What Mike did next would become the story that every guest at that wedding would tell for the rest of their lives. But before we get to that moment, if you're enjoying these untold Mike Tyson stories, we post new videos every single day, so hit that subscribe button and don't miss out. Now, to understand how the happiest day of Mike Tyson's daughter's life turned into a moment that required emergency medical services, we need to go back to the beginning of that evening. It was a Saturday in June 2018 at an exclusive venue in New York City, one of the most prestigious ballrooms in Manhattan, the kind of place that had hosted everything from celebrity galas to high society weddings. Tonight, it was hosting the wedding of Mike Tyson's daughter, Sophia, to her fiancé, Marcus Richardson. Marcus came from old money. His family had built their wealth over generations through business and investments. They were established, connected, the kind of family whose name carried weight in certain circles. Sophia was Mike Tyson's daughter. Mike had made hundreds of millions in his boxing career, but he'd also lost most of it, been to prison, and came from the streets of Brooklyn. The two families came from different worlds, and while Sophia and Marcus loved each other deeply, their union raised eyebrows in some circles. The wedding itself was beautiful. Sophia looked stunning in a custom designer dress, Marcus was handsome in his tuxedo, and Mike, walking his daughter down the aisle, had tears in his eyes that he didn't bother hiding. The ceremony was elegant but personal, mixing traditional elements with touches that reflected both families. The reception was held in the grand ballroom, decorated with thousands of white roses, gold accents, and lighting that made the entire space feel magical. There were about 200 guests, a mix of Mike's family and friends from the boxing world, and Marcus's family and their circle of business associates and socialites. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. The champagne flowed, the food was excellent, people mingled, and Sophia and Marcus looked happier than anyone had ever seen them. Mike was at the head table, beaming with pride, occasionally wiping his eyes, just a father enjoying his daughter's special day. That's when Charles Whitmore arrived late. Charles was Marcus's uncle on his mother's side, a real estate developer in his late 50s who'd inherited significant wealth. He was known in the family for being inappropriate when drunk, for saying things that made people uncomfortable, but he was tolerated because cutting him off would cause family drama nobody wanted to deal with. Charles walked into the reception already drunk, his tuxedo slightly disheveled, his bow tie undone, his face flushed with alcohol. He'd apparently been drinking at the hotel bar before coming upstairs, working up the courage to attend a wedding he'd made very clear he didn't approve of. He made his way to the bar, ordered a scotch despite clearly not needing another drink, and started making comments to anyone who would listen. "Can you believe this wedding?" he said to another guest, not bothering to lower his voice. "What's next?" A few people looked uncomfortable but didn't respond. He didn't quiet down. Mike was across the room, talking with some of his old boxing friends, but he noticed Charles. The way he was moving, the loudness of his voice, the dismissive gestures. Mike had been around enough drunk people in his life to recognize trouble brewing. Charles made his way toward the head table, stopping to make comments to various guests along the way. "Lovely wedding, shame about the circumstances. I give it 2 years max." Marcus's parents noticed and tried to intercept him, his mother actually grabbing Charles's arm and trying to guide him to a quiet corner, but Charles shook her off. "Don't manage me, Patricia. I'm just being honest. Someone needs to say what everyone's thinking. He reached the head table, where Sophia and Marcus were sitting with Mike, his wife Lakiha, and Marcus's parents. Sophia saw him coming and her face fell. She knew Uncle Charles had met him at family gatherings and had heard the comments he'd made about the engagement. "Uncle Charles," Marcus said, standing up, trying to be diplomatic, "I'm glad you could make it. Why don't we get you some water in?" "Water?" Charles laughed loudly. "It's a wedding, Marcus. We drink at weddings, although I suppose some of us are used to different kinds of celebrations." He looked directly at Mike and Mike's family, the implication clear. Mike's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. This was his daughter's day. He wasn't going to let anyone ruin it, not even an ignorant drunk. "Uncle Charles, please," Marcus said, his voice harder now. "This isn't the time or place." "Isn't it?" Charles turned to Sophia, and what he said next made the entire table go quiet. "You're a very lucky girl, Sophia. You're marrying into a family with class, with history, with a name that means something. That's quite the upgrade from where you came from, isn't it?" Sophia's face went pale. Marcus stood up, fully now angry. "That's enough, you need to leave." But Charles wasn't done. The alcohol had loosened whatever filter he normally had, and years of barely concealed prejudice came pouring out. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This girl is lucky we're even tolerating this whole thing." Mike stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. Everyone at the head table, everyone nearby, they all felt the temperature in the room drop. "Charles," Mike said, his voice very calm, very controlled, "you need to apologize to my daughter, right now." Charles turned to look at Mike, and the contempt in his expression was undisguised. "Oh, here we go. The tough guy routine. You think I'm scared of you, Tyson? You're a criminal. You went to prison. You're from the streets. You have no place in this family, and neither does your daughter. She's a gold digger who got lucky." The room went dead silent. At least 50 people had heard what Charles just said, and nobody moved, nobody breathed, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Sophia had tears in her eyes. Marcus looked like he wanted to deal with his uncle himself. Mike's wife Lakia put her hand on Mike's arm, but he gently removed it. "Apologize," Mike said again, and there was something in his voice that made several people take a step back. "Apologize to Sophia, now." Charles laughed, actually laughed. "Or what? You'll hit me. Go ahead, Tyson. Show everyone what you really are. Show everyone that underneath the suit, you're still just a thug from Brooklyn who solves problems with his fists." Mike took a breath, counted to 5 in his head, tried every technique he'd learned in anger management, every lesson about controlling his temper. This was Sophia's wedding day, the happiest day of her life. He couldn't let this drunk fool ruin it. "Uncle Charles, you're drunk and you're embarrassing yourself," Marcus's father said, finally finding his voice, stepping forward. "Let's get you out of here before." But Charles pushed him away. "Before what? Before I tell the truth. Everyone here knows this is a joke. The Tysons don't belong in our world. They never will." He made the mistake of reaching out towards Sophia, maybe to grab her arm to make a point, maybe just a drunken gesture, but he moved toward Mike's daughter in a way that Mike interpreted as threatening. Mike moved faster than anyone expected. He grabbed Charles's wrist mid-reach, stopping him cold, and his grip was strong enough that Charles actually winced in pain. "I gave you a chance," Mike said quietly. "Multiple chances. I stayed calm because this is my daughter's day and I didn't want to ruin it, but you just called my daughter a gold digger. You just disrespected my family, and now you're putting your hands near her." Charles tried to pull his wrist free, but Mike's grip was iron. "Let go of me. You're assaulting me." "I'm stopping you from making the biggest mistake of your life," Mike said. "But you're too drunk and too stupid to understand that." Charles made another mistake. He tried to swing at Mike with his free hand, an awkward, drunken punch that had no technique, no power, nothing but alcohol-fueled bravado behind it. Mike slipped it easily, released Charles's wrist, and delivered one controlled strike. Charles dropped immediately, unconscious before he hit the floor. The entire room erupted. People shouting, some screaming, Marcus's mother crying, security guards rushing forward, guests pulling out phones to call 911. Mike stood over Charles for a moment, breathing heavily. Then he looked at Sophia, whose face was a mixture of shock and relief. "I'm sorry, baby girl," Mike said to her. "I tried to let it go, I really did." Sophia stood up, walked around the table, and hugged her father tightly. "Thank you, Dad, I'm not sorry, he deserved it." Marcus was already on the phone with hotel security explaining the situation. "Yes, we need an ambulance. A guest has been in an altercation. He's unconscious." Within 5 minutes, paramedics arrived. Charles was still unconscious and they loaded him onto a stretcher, checking his vitals, stabilizing him, doing all the standard procedures. Before we continue, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was Mike right to do what he did, or should he have handled it differently? Now back to the story. As the ambulance left, police officers arrived to take statements. Multiple guests came forward immediately, all of them corroborating the same story. Charles Whitmore had been drunk, had verbally assaulted the bride and her family, had made offensive comments, and had attempted to physically confront Mike before the incident occurred in what was clearly self-defense. Marcus's father approached Mike looking devastated. "Mike, I am so sorry. Charles has always been a problem when he drinks, but I never thought he'd go this far. I should have stopped him sooner." "It's not your fault," Mike said, though his voice was still tight with controlled anger. "But your family needs to deal with him. He can't talk to people like that, especially not to my daughter." "He won't," Marcus's father said firmly. "After tonight, Charles Whitmore is no longer welcome at family functions. What he said was unforgivable." The police, after hearing from multiple witnesses and reviewing video footage that several guests had captured, determined that no further action would be taken regarding Mike. The situation was clear. Charles, when he woke up in the hospital later that night, tried to make claims, but his own family refused to support him, and nothing came of it. Back at the wedding, there was about 30 minutes of chaos and confusion. The music had stopped. The catering staff didn't know what to do. Guests were clustered in groups, talking about what they'd just witnessed. It was Sophia who made the decision. She walked up to the bandstand, took the microphone, and addressed the room. "Everyone, thank you for your patience during that situation. Uncle Charles said some terrible things tonight, and my father did what any father would do. He protected me. I'm not going to let one ignorant man ruin the happiest day of my life. So if you're here to celebrate love, to celebrate me and Marcus, then please stay. The party continues. But if you have a problem with my family, with where we come from, with who we are, then you know where the door is." Nobody left. In fact, the wedding after that moment was one of the most memorable celebrations any of those guests had ever attended. The barriers between the two families, which had been politely maintained throughout the evening, dissolved. Mike's boxing friends and Marcus's business colleagues started talking, sharing stories, finding common ground. The music got louder, the dancing got more energetic, and the love between Sophia and Marcus felt even more powerful because they'd weathered a storm together. Mike spent the rest of the night doing what he'd come to do, celebrating his daughter. He danced with Sophia, gave a heartfelt father of the bride speech that had half the room crying, and watched with pride as his daughter started her new life. Late in the evening, Marcus's mother approached Mike privately. "Mike, I want to apologize on behalf of my family. What Charles said was horrific, and you had every right to do what you did. More than that, I want you to know that I'm proud to welcome Sophia into our family. She's an amazing woman, and that has everything to do with how you raised her." Mike was surprised and touched. "Thank you, that means a lot." "No," she said. "Thank you for raising a daughter with such grace and strength, and for showing Charles that there are consequences for that kind of hatred." The story of what happened at Sophia Tyson's wedding spread quickly. By the next morning, it was being talked about everywhere, being debated on social media and discussed in various circles. Some people criticized Mike, said he should have shown more restraint, but the overwhelming response was support. One comment that went viral summed it up perfectly. Mike Tyson sat there and took verbal abuse for his daughter's sake. He only acted when the guy threatened her physically. That's not a thug, that's a father. Charles Whitmore was released from the hospital several days later. His reputation was permanently damaged. His business partners distanced themselves. His family cut him off from major events. He never apologized to Sophia or Mike, but he also never spoke publicly about what happened. Years later, Mike reflected on that night. "I'm not proud of what happened at my daughter's wedding. That's not how I wanted her day to go, but I'm also not sorry. That man disrespected my family and I gave him multiple chances to walk away, to apologize, to do the right thing. He chose not to, so I chose to protect my daughter. I'd make the same choice again." Sophia and Marcus, for their part, stayed happily married. They had children, built a life together, and bridged the gap between their families in ways that seemed impossible. And whenever they told the story of their wedding, they always emphasized the same thing. That day wasn't ruined by hatred. It was defined by Mike Tyson's love for his daughter and his refusal to let anyone make her feel less than she was. Mike Tyson was at his daughter's wedding when a drunk guest insulted the bride, calling her a gold digger and saying she didn't deserve to marry into a respectable family. 15 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. But the real story wasn't about what happened to Charles Whitmore. It was about a father who tried everything in his power to keep the peace, who counted to 10, who gave second and third chances, who only acted when someone threatened the person he loved most in the world. Some people said Mike should have walked away, should have let security handle it, should have been the bigger person. But everyone at that wedding, everyone who saw the whole situation unfold, they knew the truth. Mike Tyson was the bigger person. He showed restraint when most men wouldn't. He protected his daughter when she needed protection. And he proved that real strength isn't about using force, it's about knowing when you have to. That night wasn't about a punch. It was about a father choosing his daughter, no matter the cost.